Rainwater trickled along the furrows of a face frozen in terror. Had the ossified corpse been placed upright on a pedestal, the deceased could easily have been mistaken for the chiselings of a gifted lunatic, or even a discarded prop from some grotesque cabaret. But here, at the farthermost end of the farthermost alley of Corradon, the Clockwork City, I knew better than to accept the most obvious explanation without first turning an eye to the details. If the object were a statue, it could only have been carved by an artisan knowledgeable in every subtle variation of anatomy, down to the most minuscule line, vein, follicle, and pore. "This is no statue," I announced to those behind me. Water spilled from my frock coat as I stood. "This man died in the throes of agony." Keldon, my apprentice, peered doubtfully at the stone-white body, still garbed in twill coat and trousers. "So it's not the prank of some mischievous art student?" "I'm afraid not. Take a closer look at the finer details." Keldon knelt for a closer inspection. "You're right. I can make out every whisker on his face." Chief Inspector Tibblemond shook the water from his bowler and plopped the soggy hat back on his head.
"Detective Vescard, am I to understand this here mumper was turned into stone by some dodgy bodge fuddle or another?"
"Bone," I corrected. "No process, natural, magical, or alchemical, can transmute soft tissue into actual stone. However, there are processes that can ossify flesh into bone, for bone is a natural constituency of animal physiology." The inspector huffed.
"What processes?"
I doffed my top hat and tilted my head back, letting the oily rain beat down across my face. Only a faint sliver of grim sky was visible through the maze of steam pipes, pylons, and clockwork machinery rising to dizzying heights above. The venom of a spitting basilisk comes to mind. "There are spells that can mimic a similar effect," Keldon suggested. He drew a large brass skeleton key from his belt and turned it over in his hand. The talisman's viz-stone glowed slightly, and the sigils etched along its sides shimmered in the dim gaslight. "May I?" "By all means," I replied, returning my hat to my head. Keldon adjusted his newsboy cap, rolled his shoulders, and held his talisman over the rigid form. With eyes closed, he passed the key down the length of the body and back again. "Nothing, boss. Not even a glimmer." Keldon's findings were not surprising. I touched the severite bonds fastened to my wrists, suppressing a pang of envy. Never again would I feel the ebb and flow of the etheric energies, nor experience the majesty of the astral realm, living, vibrant, and boundless in measure. I was a man rendered blind, deaf, and numb, stripped of my greatest aptitudes, save for intellect. Had sorcery calcified this man, his death would had to have been over a week ago, I said. That is how long it takes an etheric imprint to completely dissipate from a body weighing as much as an adult humanoid male. But he did not die a week ago. In fact, he died just last night.
"How could you possibly know that?"
Tibblemond demanded, his voice betraying his incredulity. Tibblemond was not a bad investigator, but he was woefully lacking when it came to unconventional lines of reasoning, as were most in Vandor Tower. Given a straightforward homicide, an organized crime case, or even allegations of criminal sorcery, Tibblemond was more than competent. After all, such matters fell well within the purview of the Vandorian Guard's founding mission. Unfortunately, the Vandorian Guard was largely constrained by those observations and conclusions that could be quickly scribbled down in the narrowly categorized boxes of a standard case report. As a deputized freelance detective, I was not so confined. I bent down and produced a soggy scrap of paper from the victim's coat pocket. As you can see, this steam rail ticket is printed with yesterday's date. It follows that the victim was petrified sometime yesterday or last night.